Welcome to Future Trends, where we examine the latest stories reshaping tomorrow's international dynamics. This week's headlines. Germany's Merz says Iran is humiliating US. World military spend rises to $2.9 trillion. Anti-tobacco bill to create smoke-free generation. Insurgent alliance strikes in Mali. China blocks Meta's $2 billion takeover of AI startup. And global hunger more concentrated and more severe. Starting with politics, Germany's Merz says Iran is humiliating US as talks stall. The German Chancellor also said he does not see what exit strategy the US was pursuing in the Iran war, comments that underline deep divisions between Washington and its European NATO allies, which had already been festering over Ukraine and other issues. Netanyahu rivals join forces with new Party for Israel election. A right-wing centrist coalition called Together has been formed with the aim of defeating Israel's Prime Minister and his Likud party ahead of October elections. Two key rivals and former Prime Ministers, right-wing Naftali Bennett and centrist Yair Lapid, announced the merger of their parties, Bennett 2026 and Yesh Atid, or There is a Future. US-backed Ali al-Zaidi to form Iraq government. Businessman al-Zaidi is a political newcomer and has never held a government post. The announcement came shortly after the Coordination Framework, an alliance of Shia factions with varying links to Iran, had initially backed power broker Nouri al-Maliki to become the country's next prime minister, but changed after pressure from US President Trump. Mexico warns US involvement in anti-drug operations should not be repeated. It followed the unauthorized presence of US officials, reportedly CIA officers, at an anti-narcotics operation in the northern state of Chihuahua, which came to light after the two U.S. officials, along with two Mexican officials, were killed in a car crash after the operation. China bans dual-use items exports to 7 European entities over Taiwan arms sales. China banned dual-use exports to 7 European defense firms, including Germany's Hensoldt and Belgium's FN Browning, over arms sales to Taiwan. Beijing stated the measures take immediate effect but do not affect broader EU trade relations. Moving to stories in conflict, insurgent alliance strikes in Mali. It is the country's worst security crisis in more than a decade, after Tuareg separatists and al-Qaeda-linked jihadist fighters joined forces to launch attacks across Mali, delivering a huge setback for its ruling military junta and its Russian allies. Bomb on Colombia highway leaves 21 dead amid pre-election violence. Cocaine trafficking rebels were blamed for worst attack on civilians in decades, which also left 56 people injured. Israel sent Iron Dome system troops to UAE during Iran war. It was the first time Israel had sent an Iron Dome battery to another country, as the military, security and intelligence cooperation between Israel and the UAE reached new heights during the war. The UAE said Iran has fired around 550 ballistic and cruise missiles and more than 2,200 drones, making it the most targeted country in the region. UK reaffirms Falklands sovereignty. It comes after a leaked Pentagon memo suggested the US could reassess support for British sovereignty as leverage over NATO allies deemed insufficiently supportive during the Iran war. Prime Minister Starmer's office stated the UK's position remains unchanged. Syria arrests suspected leader of Tadamon massacre. Amjad Youssef had been one of Syria's most wanted fugitives following Assad's fall from power. The former regime official was suspected of leading the massacre, in which an estimated 288 civilians were killed. Turning to news and economics, world military spending rises 2.9% to $2.9 trillion. That means 2.5% of world GDP is being spent on defense, the highest percent since 2009. The US is still the world's largest military spender, but its overall spending dropped 7.5% last year, mostly due to no new aid for Ukraine, while US allies' spending, notably for NATO countries, went up. China's industrial profit growth lifts 15.8% in March, fastest in 6 months. It added to broader signs of an uneven economic recovery in the first quarter as policymakers brace for the impact of the Middle East war. The country's export engine faltered last month while retail sales and industrial output cooled, although producer prices emerged from a years-long deflationary stretch, a shift that analysts warn could leave companies boxed in by rising costs but limited pricing power as demand remains fragile. Lufthansa cuts 20,000 flights as war squeezes fuel and supplies. The move comes as the Iran war drives up oil prices and deepens worries that some countries may run low on jet fuel. Cancellation of less profitable routes, focused largely on its hub airports in the German cities of Frankfurt and Munich, would save the equivalent of approximately 40,000 metric tons of jet fuel. Meta's $2 billion takeover of AI startup Merz blocked. Merz was founded in China before relocating to Singapore amid a trend of companies trying to avoid scrutiny from Beijing and Washington. China's decision to prohibit foreign investment in Merz follows the deal attracting scrutiny from both superpowers. US investors have been prohibited from backing Chinese AI companies directly, while Beijing has increased efforts to discourage Chinese AI founders from moving business offshore. Big tech in major workforce cuts. Meta said it plans to lay off about 10% of its workforce next month and remove around 6,000 current job ads, while Microsoft announced plans to cut around 7% of its US-based workforce. The company said it was part of cost-saving efforts to reinvest in AI. Now for the latest in development. Renewables overtake coal in global electricity mix. Countries with a higher renewables output have been protected from steep rises in electricity prices since the US and Israel attacked Iran on February 28. It could boost the transition to green energy and could help households, businesses, and growth in those countries as the price impact trickles down to ordinary consumers in the coming months. AI already leading to fewer jobs for young people. Former UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, now an advisor to AI firm Anthropic and Microsoft, said concerns from graduates looking for entry-level jobs were justified. Company bosses were privately acknowledging that recruitment of young workers is flattening because of AI, led by service sectors such as law, accountancy, and creative industries. He suggested rebalancing the tax system by abolishing national insurance and replacing it with taxes on corporate profits, which would be boosted by productivity and efficiencies in deploying AI. EU approves a $105 billion loan for Ukraine as pipeline turned on to end deadlock. Ukraine says it has resumed pumping Russian oil through a pipeline into Hungary and Slovakia after approval of a loan seen as vital European Union support for Kyiv. Although the funding was agreed last December, Hungary's recently defeated former leader Orbán had vetoed the payment after Ukraine said damage caused by a Russian attack had brought supplies to a halt. Philippines' Duterte to stand trial as ICC confirms crimes against humanity charges. The International Criminal Court's charges relate to the extrajudicial killing of thousands during the former Philippine president's war on drugs between 2011 and 2019. Duterte, 81, has been in detention for over a year and denies the allegations. Global hunger more concentrated and more severe. The UN reports that 10 countries account for 2/3 of all people facing high levels of acute hunger. Afghanistan, Bangladesh, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Myanmar, Nigeria, Pakistan, South Sudan, Syria, and Yemen, and 4 of them, Afghanistan, South Sudan, and Yemen, account for the world's biggest food crises by both share and number of people who are acutely hungry. Finally, our social news. UK passes anti-tobacco bill to create a smoke-free generation. The bill permanently restricts sales of tobacco products to anyone born on or after January 1st, 2009. Those affected will face a lifetime ban on buying cigarettes, vapes, and heated tobacco. Researchers turn date pits into artificial bones. A young researcher from Saudi's date heartland has discovered that the pits share enough in common with human bone, in terms of calcium, structure, and density that they could plausibly be used in fracture repair and reconstruction. Brain cells behind depression. For the first time, scientists have identified two specific types of brain cells that behave differently in people with depression, offering a clearer picture of what is happening inside the brain. By analyzing donated brain tissue with advanced genetic tools, the researchers found changes in neurons linked to mood and stress, as well as in immune-related microglia cells. Russian superyacht crosses blockaded Strait of Hormuz. It is not clear how the 142-meter pleasure vessel, linked to sanctioned Russian billionaire Alexei Mordashov, gained permission to use the route. Since February, Iran has severely restricted traffic through the strait, which typically handles around 1/5 of the world's oil supply. The superyacht, Nord, is one of very few vessels, mainly merchant ships, to transit the blockaded shipping lane at the heart of the US-Iran conflict. Pesticide exposure linked to 150% higher cancer risk. Living in pesticide-heavy environments could raise cancer risk significantly, even when the chemicals are considered safe on their own. The research suggests these mixtures may silently damage cells years before cancer appears. That's your Future Trends update for this week. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time with more stories reshaping our world.